everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Upshift Creek. We put the fun in Formula One. Unfortunately, one of our co-hosts, Nick Calderon, can't be here. Cancelled flight, wasn't it? Chicago, all kinds of drama going on. But we're going to go ahead with me and, of course, my another esteemed co-host, Ryan Sandler. Welcome back to the show, buddy.
It's so good to be back. I forgot that Formula One was still a thing.
I know. It was like waiting for a whole other season of a TV show. Whoever's responsible for there being this 4-week break, I'm done with it. I'm no more. Apparently it's because the Chinese Grand Prix got cancelled. So, okay, we're blaming China as a country.
And then to go from the race we had, the exciting race we had, I almost said last week, Jesus, last three weeks ago, which seems like an eternity, to go to this race weekend, which was just action-packed, nonstop. As I watched it, as I'm sure most of our listeners at home watched it, just staring directly into their phones, falling asleep for a good hour and a half.
Well, we'll get there. Of course, the biggest question of the weekend, as always, was who's going to finish third? Because that being said, actually, as I'm wearing, you can't see it if you're listening, but I'm wearing my Lewis Hamilton 2008 World Champion McLaren shirt that looks like a Mercedes shirt, but considering the way the season's going, it's time for my my Red Bull hat.
Oof.
I think I got this in 2010. If you look closely, it's signed by Sebastian Vettel, the year he
that's
became
amazing.
World Champion, and Mark Webber. So
That's so cool.
in honor of Red Bull kicking ass, I will put their hat on. Credit where credit's due. So one thing, though, was interesting about this weekend, mate, wasn't it? Because it was the debut of the new sprint race format. And we all figured it would go ahead the same as it had last year, but not like a few days before, they go, okay, here's what's actually going to happen. And it ended up being a main race sandwich with quali on Friday for the race, and then the race on Sunday. But on Saturday, we had our own short version of quali and then the sprint race. So I'm just going to throw it to you. How did you feel that all went down?
Well, even leading into this weekend, I know with the old switcheroo, you had sent me, people were sending me videos explaining this whole weekend. I watched them several times, and I still had absolutely no idea what was happening until I was in the middle of watching the race. I'm like, oh, it's just like qualifying, but with extra steps.
Yeah, I mean, you're not the only one, mate. Ferrari, when they on their social media, they put out, this is what's happening this weekend, and they got it wrong. And people are like, nobody tell them. No one tell them. See what happens. It's like they got their days mixed up as well. So the way it worked is, we had only one practice session. So one practice session and then qualifying. Now, I know a lot of people have been like complaining about this weekend. I can tell you, Ryan and I were just talking to Nick on the phone. He's not a fan. Not a fan of this weekend. Not a fan of the format. Max Verstappen, not a fan of the format. He was complaining pretty loudly. Toto Wolff has come out and said he doesn't like it. And I'm going to say, I actually did. Because only one practice session and you're going into quali meant no one knew what they were doing with their cars and everyone was stacking into the walls.
I had more fun watching the sprint shootout and the sprint race than I did watching the actual Grand Prix.
I agree. And the thing is, that's actually something I want to talk about a little bit later because they were two very different races.
Yeah.
Same cars, same track, just slightly different temperature. So let's kick things off then. We had Friday. So we had P1 and we get into just main qualifying. Now, I agree. I think I like this because there's always been this, like, every weekend, they're always like, do we call it pole position if it's a sprint qualifying? Because it's only when you finish first in the race that you then get pole. So now they're like, okay, we go back to the official records of a pole position. You finish first in qualifying, you get pole. But then again, like I said, with only one practice session, we go out and almost like immediately in Q1, Nick de Vries spanks it, stacks it into the wall, and we get our first red flag. And like the thing is, in practice right before, he was P6.
Yeah.
So, like, we're already off to the races. We've already got a red flag. He spanks it. The red flag's finally dealt with. They clean it up. Then Gasly spanks it again, going into turn 3. And we get red flag number 2. So this is kind of what I'm saying is, with this very reduced practice, instead of getting 3 of them, we've got guys not knowing what their tires are doing, not knowing what their cars are doing, not knowing their setup, and we're getting all of these screw-ups, which I think mixes it up. What do you think?
And they're still, there's nothing stopping them from like pushing their cars to the absolute limits. And, it definitely makes it more interesting, them not knowing how much they can push their tires or push their cars. And Sometimes they just push them straight into the wall.
That's why I like it. I mean,
Yeah,
especially
I
on
dig
a track
it.
like
I'm into
Baku, you know, you make one mistake.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we'll get to them, but I mean, there were about like 10 different incidents of cars clipping the walls and, you know, taking off a wheel or just like, you know, kissing it a little bit too much. And I was like, I think that's very much because they didn't have enough time to practice. And I think there's too much practice. And in fact, drivers have said this. They're like, there's too many practice sessions. You know, it's like, oh, we're doing the long run, we're doing the short run, we're doing the tire run. I'm like, I think they should just give them one practice session and go, give them 15 minutes to just make sure their car works and then make them do qualifying.
Yeah. Or we're giving like just 2 quick rounds, let them run it out, let them make some tweaks, and then just have at it.
The interesting thing was as well, they got, it was the 3 softest tire compounds this time around, wasn't it? So it was the C3, C4, C5. And those tires were cooking off. Like they were just melting.
Yeah.
It was insane. The Reds lasted about 3 laps before they're like, nope, okay, they're done.
Yeah, and I think it was McLaren that had the strategy like, well, we're out of soft tires. We're probably not going to make it to Q3 anyway. So
yes, there you go. Excellent point. We'll definitely touch on that. That was that sort of situation. So we'll stick with quali for now.
Yeah,
so we've had that.
Yeah.
So we've had 2 red flags just during Q1. You know it's going to be good when you wake up to watch qualifying on the app, and it's like it says it's an hour and 45 minutes. You're like, oh,
something happened. Yes.
Fast forward.
Yeah.
So we've got De Vries out, Gasly out, K-Mag has to stop because he's got mechanical issues. Ocon clips the wall going into turn 15, which is like that tricky one that everybody gets wrong.
Oh yeah.
But then it got pretty interesting. So like we've got all that drama, but the Williams were looking racy, and both of them get into Q2.
Yeah.
Sargent's into Q2, Albon's into Q2, Piastri is into Q2. And I think this is the point where we go, the last 4 weeks has benefited one team, and that would be McLaren. Because they have been getting our Upshift Creek award pretty consistently.
Yeah.
They've been having a shocker of a season. And suddenly they've been finding, they said they found like 200ths of a second or something like that per lap.
It's good pace.
It was nice seeing like Norris and Piastri actually mixing it up was actually quite fun.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think about Piastri? You still think he's got it? Like, you know, because you see him next to Norris. Norris, we've all got a soft spot for Norris. I'm not quite sure why, but we all think he can win. But Piastri is like, he's been having a bit of a shocker of a season, but he did pretty well this time around, right?
Yeah, I mean, which one's he again?
Piastri's the Australian. He's we see, Piastri got through.
Right.
Russell, this was the bit that confused me. George Russell ended up 11th. He didn't even make it into Q3. Piastri got through.
At the very end, right? Didn't he like barely squeaked it through, like on his last lap? Yeah.
Right at the end. So we ended up with in Q3, we ended up with Verstappen and Leclerc put in the exact same time.
Yeah, I had that. No, that was unbelievable.
Yeah, down to like thousandths of a second, exactly the same time. I find it interesting that they're like, well, whoever said it first wins. I'm like, okay, but then again, what are you going to do? Toss a coin?
I was wondering what the ruling on that was. Is that what it is? Whoever sets that time first?
Whoever sets the time first. It's happened. There was one time quite a few years ago where first, second, and third were all the same time, down to thousandths of a second. They could not separate the times, which is wild when you think of however much development goes in to each of those cars, the different teams, right? The different track, tires, driver.
It's amazing that Max was so kind to slow himself down so that Charles could get the same exact time as him. That was such a nice gesture.
Well, at first, because then we had Charles go back out and we ended up with Leclerc, Verstappen, Perez, Sainz, Hamilton, and Alonso. You know, like we were looking for a little bit of Alonso, but that gave us quali. And so we're like, okay, so we've set the grid for the race. We all wake up the next morning and then it's just absolute bonkers. It's a whole race weekend just crammed into one weekend. So I know you said you watched all those videos. Did you pick up what was different about the sprint shootout?
Yeah, I watched both the shootout, and it was the videos that trying to explain it to me before it happened. But once I got into it, I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. It makes sense. Like the shootout was like the sprint qualifying for the sprint race.
Yes.
But also none of this really matters outside of 8 points. So,
Right. But
but for you're right, for
made
them
it
to
different.
sandwich it in the middle was really an odd choice to me, I guess. Like
I kind of dug it. It's like, well, cool. Saturday we get to wake up and watch a little bit of everything. But it's a shortened qualifying, so it's only 44 minutes. In Q1 you have to use the mediums. In Q2 you have to use the mediums, and in Q3 you have to use the softs. And that's where, like you said, the McLarens, I guess, weren't expecting to make it to Q3. Norris ends up 10th, and then he's like, well, guys, we don't actually have any softs. We've just been dicking around with them. So he just goes and sits in there and watches the rest of qualifying for like everybody else.
I was wondering, like, I mean, it's unfortunate it went down that way, but they were trying to be proactive, I guess.
What was interesting is, like, at least on this time round, it seemed that some of the younger drivers had figured out how to use the escape roads. Because like the previous day, De Vries and Gasly just going straight into the water. It's like, you've just got to commit to that escape. So we saw De Vries again take an exit row. We saw Piastri use the exit row. And then Logan Sargent is in 11th place. He's fine. He's going to be getting through to the next sessions. And then what happens? Turn 15.
His car gets obliterated.
He obliterates the car. Yeah, that was a heavy shunt, man. He took the whole back right of that car.
And it looked like he barely, I mean, these walls, as unforgiving as they were, considering the race that we'll get into, but I mean, it seems like barely even kissing these walls. We're shredding these cars, shredding these tires.
I think it's the speed, isn't it? I mean, they just, they clipped the wall at 160 miles an hour. The thing is, like, as that happened, I remember because Yuki was down in 17th or 18th, and he was on a flyer, and he's coming up to the start-finish straight. And so then Sargent crashes. Of course, it goes red flag. And of course, like, Yuki Tsunoda was super chill about it. No, he wasn't. He was Yuki Tsunoda. I love Yuki's radio calls. That guy is just like the angriest Japanese fella ever. It's like with a quasi-British accent. It's just every time the radio turns on, it's just
he's difficult for me to understand in multiple languages.
Sounds like he's talking in Morse code.
Mate, son of a beep. I mean, at least his tire stuck it out on the track longer than he did. The thing just generally rolling down.
that came in the race. We'll get to that one as well. The most memorable moment, I think, of the race there.
Delightful.
We saw Piastri get 11th. Stroll got the toe. And then that's when it got interesting as well. So we get into they call it SQ3, I guess, sprint qualifying 3. All these new bloody terms we're having to learn. I'm like, God, I got this list out. But Leclerc's setting in first, and then he does his favorite trick, which he did in Monaco once, which is, well, make sure you stay first by stacking it into the wall.
What an insane strategy for Ferrari to call.
It worked last time. Well, it didn't work because it broke his gearbox last time. But this time, it paid off. Yeah. So, I mean, I say that, but it's a little tongue-in-cheek because Verstappen, Perez, and were all ahead of him. I think the only person he screwed was Sainz.
Yeah. I'm surprised he kept that fastest time. That was, with the time they had left, was really impressive.
Yeah, but okay, so answer me this, right? So, how is the Ferrari fast in qualifying? And then not? Why are the Red Bulls so much quicker when it comes to the race? Because we'll get to the sprint race. That's right.
You couldn't have asked the worst person to ask that question to.
Well, the thing is, the race this is where. So I thought the sprint race was pretty fun.
I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Because the cars are a bit lighter. I think that they're as fueled up, right? Yeah. So they're a little bit lighter on their feet. And what I dug was turn 1, turn 2, and turn 3. George Russell and Max Verstappen playing bumper cars.
Oh boy,
that was
it's not so much the bumping, but the commentary after was just the shade being thrown, as the kids say, was just an absolute delight.
It was an entire race full of passive aggressive radio calls from one Max. Max is the guy that puts his car there and says, you either crash into me or you let me through. And George is like, cool, I'll crash into you. And the end. But like, Max, you've done this to plenty of people yourself. Yeah. But it was the radio calls between Max and the team that, even the commentators were like rolling their eyes.
I have the screenshot pulled up. It says, lovely job, Max, without contact as well. Nicely done. Yeah, I know how to do that. in his most passive aggressive way. I know we had a
Yeah.
lovely conversation bringing that up over the weekend, but
And they know everyone's bloody listening. But honestly, it did just sound a bit whiny. I mean, Max, you're the double world champion and you race aggressive. And George, he's an F2 champ and he races aggressive. And it's going to happen on the first 3 corners of the first lap. It happens. But to spend the next however many laps it was for the sprint race, because you lose track at it, the 100 kilometers of it.
And I mean, the thing with Max is like nothing will ever be his fault. Like he could have easily put George in that position where he couldn't have avoided a collision. And it's still like, how dare he touch my car that way? That's not okay.
He does have that's the thing. Max is so good. He's and so like good. I just loved watching him race, and he's an incredible driver, but sometimes I just don't like him.
I'm starting to feel that way. Like it's funny, and just as a newcomer to this series, like watching a full season last year, I was like, wow, this guy's so incredible. He's unstoppable. He's ice cold. He's Team Iceland from the Mighty Ducks, like I said. And now I'm like, he's kind of a dick.
He's just, the thing is, he doesn't need to be. That's exactly, I mean, it's like, but the thing is, if you watch Ted Lasso, it's like they've got the Dutch player. No. Remember, he's not being a dick. He's just being Dutch.
The man is just a machine. It'd be different if he couldn't back it up with how incredible he is as a driver. You know, it'd be different if he had that ego and he was just terrible, which saying it out loud sounds hilarious. Give me that driver. I want a driver that is fueled purely by hubris and cigarettes. Give me that driver.
Oh, well then, excellent. Just watch the movie Rush. There you go.
Exactly. All right. Yes.
That's what you were talking about. Back when drivers had a champagne before the race, and just like bring the ladies over.
Yes.
But that's the kind of what I'm saying with Max is he does let his driving do the talking.
Yeah.
Why do you need to be doing all the talking? You know, because once the race was done and we've got even more commentary, even more messages from Red Bull, George comes up to talk to him and he's just like, you know, gives it to him. What are you doing? You can't do this. Look at the damage to my car. You wait what season happens, like what happens to you next time? Basically threatens to say, I'm going to run you off the road. I'm like, Max, chill. Yeah. You're still finished on the podium.
It was starting to look like the new season of Cobra Kai, just very childish and high school and a bit fighty and a lot of words and a lot of cute men and all this nonsense.
Less kicking. So far, but you know, there were some interesting plot twists. Like you mentioned before, the most memeable moment, I think, of the race was Yuki's tire. For a while, just suddenly the shot switches and we just see a tire rolling down from turn 15 and everyone's like, what's going on?
You're eerily calm, I might say. Just like very like, huh.
Oh, that looks like one of the mediums is doing pretty well as it approaches turn 16. Hopefully he'll get a good approach and have DRS. But that's where things got a bit messed up, right? So Yuki's car's on 3 wheels, right? He limps it back to the pits. They change the tires. And they send him out, and everyone can see. Commentators can see, Fred Vasseur can see, like people sitting in another country can see that car don't look good. And so starts Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, but he's not going so fast, and everyone else was pretty bloody furious because that car crab walked its way around the track.
It couldn't. I mean, again, as a newcomer, I was watching this happen. I'm like, what? How? First of all, I mean, his car was like almost corkscrewed from his tire literally exploding. And then I don't know how they just fixed that car up with what looked like acrylic paint and some duct tape.
You got your duct tape, mate. Just stick it back together and just, go on, give it a go. Go and see what you can do, mate.
It was a real head scratcher.
Well, no, the head scratcher comes from the fact that there was all of these escape roads. Turn 3.
He did a full lap.
I'm just at 15 miles an hour, you know, and so it's just extending the safety car because that's why what happened during that pass with we just got a safety car, so they came out, and that's kind of like it slowed the race down, kind of like bunched people up, and then it was on the safety car restart that Max just annihilated Russell. It took him. It was one of the greatest like safety car restarts because remember the rule is. You can't overtake until the start-finish line. So everybody goes, you know, you've got Perez goes, Leclerc goes, Russell goes, and Verstappen has got George in his sights and he stays like an inch behind him. until the moment they crossed the line. And then I was like, it was a masterful piece of driving. Just minus all the passive aggressive nonsense. That's what I'm saying. Is it's like you're driving through the talking, Max, because that was incredible to watch. To have that kind of like, know exactly where you need to be at exactly the time.
On a severely damaged car, I might add.
Severely.
The hole was, I believe the term is gaping in his car. We'll talk about that later.
He left him gaping. Yeah. So this is right. So Perez eats up Leclerc, right? So as soon as they have that opportunity, he's past him, but he holds on a second.
I mean, him rocketing past him was unbelievable. Like it just shows you how fast those Red Bulls are.
The Red Bulls are like they have two DRSs.
Yeah.
So theirs is always open, and then when they open a DRS, it's like, oh my god, well, bye.
That's like changing the difficulty to easy mode, and he just
shoot past everybody.
It's like, was he on a different track? What is happening?
But so we get Sergio Perez first place, 8 points. Leclerc gets 7, Verstappen picks up 6, Russell 5, Sainz, and then then afterwards the bit of drama was then the extra bit of chat that came between Max and George, and then it was all going off in the press, and everyone's making comments, and Max is like, "Oh yes, he's very good at coming up with excuses to his behavior." I'm like,
"Oh man, just let them fight."
It's Godzilla versus Kong.
Yes.
Go on.
I do have a question as far as a sprint race in general goes. I was wondering this: if you get the fastest lap in a sprint race, do you also get points for that?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
No. So that's again, but they do seem. I mean, I'm going to give them credit. Again, I'm going to give Formula One credit. They're trying something new.
Yeah.
That's the first time they've done it. I think throw it out there, but it is becoming a little bit like confusing, especially like you're in your first 1.5 seasons into Formula One.
I didn't even know what a sprint race was until last year.
Honestly, neither did anybody. These things are pretty new.
Yeah.
But I thought that was a really entertaining race. The 15 laps of racing that we got on outside of the safety car. I thought it was fun. It was up there. I think there was overtaking. There was wheel to wheel. There was all kinds of drama. I'm like, cool. There's a great race.
I think like as far as if you're one of the few blessed to be able to go to a race weekend, you're getting so much more race out of it with something like this instead.
Right.
It's more enjoyable. It switches it up. It keeps it, as the Ferrari team says, spicy.
Do you reckon this is just Formula One's way of justifying the massive cost of going to see a race now? So we'll give you an extra race. How about an extra race? Yeah, cool.
I suppose. And like even early on, it looked like no one was there except for the people standing on their patio, drinking champagne, being able to watch the race.
Yeah. I was watching with my buddies, and their daughter was there, and she's like, "Man, it would be cool to just be in one of those apartments, and just like, oh, look at that, I'm living next to the Formula One,
Yeah.
It is the best way to do it. That's how I used to do it in Singapore. We'd all team up, because anytime you get the Formula One comes into town, they just go add a 0 to every hotel room. That's it. So a 200.
Oh God, at least, and a 1 in the front.
So like 20 of us used to team up, and we'd basically get a hotel room. Yeah, and so we spend $2,000 on a hotel room. Everyone pays $100 each.
Dude, that's the way to do it.
And we you order room service and watch the race from your balcony.
When they were doing like the flybys over how they have, first of all, we're going to have an episode where you guys explain to me the logistics of, all right, we're just going to shut this down for 2 weeks, build a racetrack in the middle of the city and blah, blah, blah. But like seeing the overhead, I was like, what if I lived right in the middle there? I'm like, oh man, I got to go to work today. Like,
just walk. It's a nightmare. I mean, I remember they shut down 10 of the busiest roads in Baku.
Yeah.
For this. I mean, if you've ever seen, it's the turn 1. Yeah. They showed you, there was a picture that was going around online, and it's turn 1 for the F1 weekend, and you've got, cars going, and it's turn 1 any other day, and there's like 15 lanes of cars all trying to take that car. It looks like absolute carnage. It's like a destruction derby, or as Max Verstappen would describe turn 2.
Yes. God.
Oh, get over it, Max. Just do your bloody racing. You're so good. All right. So then, fine. Race is done. So now at this point, we've had a qualifying and a race on Saturday. We all wake up on Sunday morning and try to remember the qualifying that happened on Friday. And you're like, where did everybody qualify again? It's like,
I'm so confused.
Are we doing this again?
Yeah, I don't know how else you would do it. I mean, like, You do pre-qualifying for the sprint showdown, and then the sprint showdown qualifies for the sprint race, then the sprint race qualifies for the Grand Prix, and then
I think
Red Bull
maybe
wins.
qualifying for the sprint race should just be a tombola. You know, and you're like, it's like a lottery comes out. Ooh, and praying first
Ooh,
place,
I like that. Yeah,
Hulkenberg. You know what I mean? It's like just go
very Hunger Games.
completely
Very Hunger
random.
Games. I still think they should like have to run out to their cars and then get in them and then drive. Like,
Le
if
Mans
you're-
style.
Yeah, like if you're gonna do it, like really go for it. Make it really spice it up.
Just do something ridiculous. I like this one. Or just like maybe then they get like some octopus to pick like the winner of the World Cup every year. Get like a sentient octopus to decide who gets to go to which
First of all,
position.
studies have just realized that all octopuses are now sentient. So
That's what I heard. Yeah, I feel really bad about eating some sentient people.
yeah,
It's like, sorry, cephalopods, you're the bottom. All right, so we get to the race. We've got Leclerc on pole. We saw how during the sprint race, they all stayed pretty close. You know, Leclerc was second. I was thinking, this is interesting. Ferraris are looking pretty speedy. Charles, he's got what it takes to get on pole, but he just cannot convert any pole, any pole to a race win. And in this case, it took 3 laps. Verstappen is passed. 5 laps, Perez is passed. And then it becomes kind of like, for a while, we're all thinking, well, it's going to be the Red Bull show. And it was. This is the question I'm mystified about. How is it in the race that when it came down to it, that the Red Bulls were a second a lap faster than every other car? A second a lap. You know, at one point they were like 20 seconds ahead.
I was looking when I was briefly waking up through intervals of this race to make sure I wasn't missing anything. I just couldn't believe like the top times. Like, yeah, it was like he was 16 seconds ahead, and then the next group was like 20 some odd seconds ahead.
Yeah.
I'm surprised no one got lapped. It was unbelievable how far ahead these Red Bulls were.
It was like there were 3 different races going on, wasn't there? There was like one group, 20 seconds, another group, 20 seconds, and then the other group. And you're like, which is so weird because Baku is usually so bonkers. To say it even out loud that Baku was boring is strange, but it kind of was. But
Azerbaijan is not my favorite track, but it is my favorite Harry Potter film.
The Prisoner of Azerbaijan. Yeah, that's a particularly good one. Wingardium Baku! So, and also quite interesting, like we're talking about, is that they had the 3 softest tires out there, the C3, C4, C5. And the mediums were expected to make it like 17 laps. And we were at 10 laps, 9 laps, and people were already pitting.
Right.
And so like the pit stop start, Hamilton pits, and as Verstappen is approaching the pits, suddenly the camera cuts and you've got an AlphaTauri just sitting there. And everyone's like, oh, what's going on? Why is he still sitting there? And we don't really realize until later, but it's De Vries has spanked it again. He's clipped the apex. He took off his front left. He's broken the suspension. And so that's when the safety car comes out. And this is kind of what everyone ended up being the biggest story because it was the only story of the race. But it was Max had just pit, right?
Yeah.
So he's lost all that time. Then the safety car comes out. And so that enables Perez and Leclerc to jump Max.
But what was was it Red Bull's call to do that? Like what made him pit? I mean, I know you can't predict what's going to happen on the track, but it seems like such an insane strategy.
I think it was
for Red
just
Bull to pull.
Because you've got the strategists, right? You've got the team.
Yeah.
You've got the driver. You've got the person he's talking to to communicate everything. And I think because if you rewatch it, he was talking about how he was losing the back end.
He was losing. He was getting slippy. Yeah.
Yeah, all of those mediums were just like blah, blah, blah. They were just they were melting like the Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters at the end when all the flame comes up. It's just that's a deep reference, but it's exactly what the tires were doing. And so I think he was due to pit. I think he was just coming around 10, 15.
Just unlucky.
People see the car has stopped, but I assumed, as many did, even the commentators. You listen, you say, "Oh, the engine's still running. Surely he's just going to back up and get back on the track." No one realized it was as bad as it was. So I think it was just unfortunate timing. They aren't, immortal. They aren't all, they're not a sentient octopus.
Right.
Yeah.
Good callback.
Maybe they need to hire an octopus at Red Bull and fix this problem.
Give me that show.
It's basically like The Boys, but with less sex with octopus.
So now, because I don't know if he got the call. Like, so when you enter that pit lane, no matter what, you have to pit. You have to change tires or something. Like, you can't just like casually go
Well,
past.
there's no point because
Right.
you're gonna. I mean,
You're
in the
still
old days, you
slowed.
could have
Yeah.
just gone through the pits at
Oh yeah.
top speed.
Right.
Now, because once you're in, you're committed. You're changing your tires. But that was that
Yeah.
thing. So then it enabled Charles, enabled Perez to get their free pit stop.
Right.
But everyone's saying, "Oh well, that's what enabled Perez to win." But I'm like, yeah, but once the restart happens, Max gets Charles in 3 corners. So he's already up in a second. He's right behind Perez. But I thought Perez put on a phenomenal performance this weekend.
It was like he was driving home from work listening to the radio.
As a Ferrari said, a spicy.
Yeah.
It's a spicy Mexican performance that came out this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, he was just like he was casually on his way driving home from his job, listening to some smooth jazz. Not a care in the world.
He seemed pretty relaxed, though.
Incredible.
Though, I mean, again, there was still some drama, and I think I'm gonna just put my foot down. Not think. I'm telling you, it's because no one's had enough practice. As in, people are just still figuring out their cars. That we had Stroll clip the wall. The same place as De Vries did, but he didn't break his car. I guess Aston Martin's got some, better. Dad's money is wrapped around the suspension.
I did have earlier in the race. There was a bit where I was like Lance Stroll making sure Daddy was proud. Did you see what I did, Daddy? I listened, Daddy. What was I doing,
actually,
Daddy?
I just remembered. So Fernando Alonso is just everyone loves him. He's a massive champ. He's always thinking about everybody else's races, and we hear him come over the radio. Did you catch this during the race?
Yeah.
Where he suggested brake balance for Lance.
Yeah.
Tell Lance to try my brake balance; it will help. Yeah. And I'm like, not only is the guy racing and doing bloody great because he's still right up there. I mean, he was where was he? About 4th place. But as he's racing, he's also like, hey, tell the billionaire's son that if he changes his brake balance, it'll be a little bit better. I'm like,
oh man,
Lawrence Stroll's a genius. I mean, he's to do Sebastian Vettel and then Fernando Alonso. If Stroll ends up being a world champion one day, then you'll be like, well, money can buy.
Yeah.
You just buy him the best damn coaches in the world and get the tips from them, because that was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we'll mention it later, but just the coordination with them and the teamwork was genuinely impressive. Like, I mean, other people were explaining it to me, but
it was when they were doing quali, one of the qualies when Fernando went around and gave Stroll a toe
boost,
all the way down like the start-finish straight. I think, I mean,
you don't see any other team, like you don't see Max and Checo doing that. Like you don't see.
I mean, even George and Lewis, you can tell. I mean, like George, the jokes online and they're playing ping pong or whatever, but they're always trying to win. Drivers are always trying to win. Yeah. Whereas, Fernando's been there. He has won. He can win. He knows he's good, but he also is like, well,
but he doesn't want to upset business, Daddy.
Yeah, it's the best. It's the best teamwork that's happening, I think, of all the teams.
Yeah, for sure.
Is Aston Martin, and I think it's because I think it's a relaxed nature for Alonso because he's like, well, I'm getting paid.
Yeah.
And I'm doing well, and it's a good car.
And it's showing in their results too,
Yeah. I think I'm big. I'm like, I mean, I hate the whole billionaire class thing. I hate people that are rich enough to buy Twitter and ruin it. I mean, honestly, this experiment has not been going well for Lawrence Stroll, but until this year, where it's been paying off. But I thought that was incredible. That's just Alonso just being Fernando.
Yeah.
Just thinking about how's Lance Race doing? Oh, is he having problem with his back end? Oh, well, maybe change the brake balance. And I'm like, to think like that when you're driving 1160, 200 miles around a street circuit.
I can't even switch my radio stations while I'm driving my car.
I have to turn the volume down to reverse.
And when I'm parking,
So I thought that was pretty awesome.
Touch on.
The way it ended up then is Perez wins again. I mean, this is what's cool. That's what's so cool about this weekend is all's fair in love and Red Bull, but head to head, Perez outqualified Max on one of the qualies and won both races. He's only like, was it 11 points or 9 points behind Max now in the championship? Yeah. And this is what we were asking for. And I think as a mental boost for Checo, you've shown in the same car that you can beat Max Verstappen. He came for him. Max came for him.
Yeah.
He kept that gap. Max could not chase him down. He could not catch him. And he had to settle for second, which I think for Max Verstappen is basically like, you know, oh, dad's going to be so angry.
Yeah.
So that was like, yeah, I think Checo has thrown down the gauntlet, and I think I really want him to pick it up and run with it.
Just, I mean, and again, I know we talked about this in episodes before. You just see the difference in how they are as drivers and how they are as people, and it's just a completely different vibe when Max wins versus when Checo wins. And I have more fun watching Checo win now, I guess. You know, I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for him.
I do. I'm absolutely. I'm on board. This my Red Bull hat. This is for Checo, but then the race finishes, or so we think. Because what was weird was the softs were just enough for 2 laps. The mediums were enough for 7 laps. And it turns out the hards were good enough for every single one of the laps because we had Ocon and Hulkenberg.
I was going to say, I don't think Hulkenberg
goes
at
all the way to the very last lap. Like they've even, as in I think they've crossed the line. But Ocon is down. He has to pit or he gets disqualified. And that's that really scary moment that happened. We all saw. The commentators saw it coming for a full 2 laps.
Oh, boy.
And it's the bit where, if you guys don't remember it, Ocon comes into pit on the last lap, and they're already creating parc fermé. You've already got photographers just milling around. They're even putting the soft, you can't come into the club VIP barrier. And then they all look up and just see this Formula One car barreling towards them. And I'm like...
That could have been... so insane. He just became like a stage 3 rally driver at that point.
That's right. Through. It's like the old 80s.
Oh my God. I'm watching that happen. When you were watching it like live, you only see it briefly. Like, oh no. Oh God.
Yeah.
That could have been horrific.
That's one of those things, questions are going to have to be answered about that. We've talked about it before. We've talked about it personally before. Is that Formula One is a dangerous sport. We have just had the anniversaries of Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna's deaths at Imola, which was back-to-back, day after day. We almost lost Rubens Barrichello the same weekend. So since all these rules come in, what miscommunication happened? Because the other part was the teams have been told you can't climb the fencing anymore. Yeah. Red Bull are all over the fences. They're playing like it's they're climbing in a monkey bars and stuff like that. They're all, and we're like, well, hang on, we're not supposed to be doing that. And you've got a car coming in for a pit stop. So, I mean, there was a bunch of fudge ups.
Yeah, everything could have gone wrong. Thankfully, nothing did.
Yeah.
But, man, it was really dicey there for a bit.
I think everyone's lucky. I think the FIA in particular are pretty lucky. But that was a serious screw up. So, so we finally see. That's the thing. They did take it away for 4 weeks, but they did give us a lot to talk about this time around. Yeah. Because there was... a lot happened. Before we move on, let's talk about our the awards that we like to do. So our Upshift. Let's start with the Upshift. The Upshift award we like to give to anyone, team, commentator, streaker, whoever's the best thing about a particular weekend. For me, I only had 2. I think one is obviously Perez. Like I said. Outqualified Max, outperformed Max in 2 races, taking home a huge haul of points. But the other one I put on there was McLaren, who have been our Upshift Creek winners repeatedly, but they have gone from 18th and 19th to they finished 9th and 11th. So they've obviously put some work in on that car.
Yep.
What do you think? What's your Upshift, do you think?
I gave my Upshift to Charles Leclerc for, I think it was his first podium this season. And I thought he really earned it. With the qualifying, I thought he just drove really well. Granted, he didn't win. He was 3rd on the podium, but I think he did a fantastic job all weekend. And as far as the sprint goes, I think it's a miracle that Ferrari just made it 17 laps in general. Thought that was a nice treat for them.
Well, I got a feel for Charles because he's now failed to convert 8 pole positions into a win in a row. So I just don't get why they're so quick and quali, and the Red Bulls are just so much better on the track when it comes to a race. It really is a mystery to me. So Charles, okay, I'm going to go with Checo. We did speak with Nick, as in he's been having a bit of a drama the last couple of days But he's gone with his Upshift award as Checo as well. And I think that we've all, as fans, manifested this, that we understand it's going to be a two-man race this year. It's going to be Max and Checo. And I want to see some fireworks. I want to see some in-team tension. I want to see, it gets to the point where the two sort of like mechanics on either side, they don't let the other side know what they're doing. That's what I want. A little bit of Red Bull drama.
You want to see a little Danny Ricciardo sprinkled in there too, just for good measure.
That's right. Oh yeah, and every time it's just Danny peeks into the background going, "All right, mate. Hey, I can still race." Smile.
Big smiles. Yeah. Legend.
So what about the Upshift Creek Award? The Upshift Creek Award we give to just whoever just tanked it, whoever spanked it, whoever just sucked all weekend. Nick has gone with, let's discuss Nick's one, because Nick has gone with the entire sport of Formula One.
In general, yeah.
He's not a fan of this sprint shootout, but he also found the race really boring. And he's not alone in this. Toto Wolff was saying similar, that Lewis Hamilton was saying similar as well, is that this new technology that's been much touted, the new designs, the closer racing, has not manifested in the way we thought. There's not crazy overtaking. I mean, on a track like Baku, which is like you've got a lot of straight, you've got a lot of DRS, we weren't getting very much action.
Yeah, I mean, what's their logic? Is like, let's make the cars bigger and the tracks more narrow. Like, how's that?
Yeah, I knew. The cars are massive now.
Insane. It's ridiculous.
You go back and watch those old races, it's like they're racing around in go-karts.
It's nuts. It's just the cockpit is just the size of the man that it fits in, and now it's like a limousine. It's crazy.
So, I mean, I think that's a bit extreme from Nick. I'm going to say it's one race. We've had some great races this season. I think the FIA, could definitely be, because of that whole foobar situation with Ocon. I can sort of see that, but I feel like everyone's just getting a bit too antsy and worried about it. We've got Miami coming up next, which is also kind of a street circuit. And it's like, it's only been 4 races, guys. We've got 19 to go.
It's been 84 years since the last race.
It's been so long. I hated it.
Yeah.
So for me, my Upshift Creek, I think it's AlphaTauri. They had a shocker of a weekend. You had De Vries in the wall in quali, I think. You had Yuki in the wall, and then you had Tokyo Drift and the safety car. Then you had De Vries in the wall again, and you had AlphaTauri releasing that broken car. Then I think it was kind of like AlphaTauri's no good, very bad race weekend.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on that, I was going to say I had their pit crew for just allowing that car to go casually back on the track, completely sideways. It's like, you see those futuristic cars that can like turn their wheels in and parallel park themselves. That's what were they trying there? Crazy.
It's like one of those mechanics. You bring your car in, he goes, "Ooh, don't know. Was my wheel always hanging off? Yeah, that's how it came into the shop, mate. You know, you want me to fix that? That's another 600 quid, chief."
Yep. I know what those words are.
You watch more British television than I do.
I do.
Flipping cushy.
Man.
So you're going to go with Alpha as well?
Yeah, and I had Max for just, I'm sure, having an absolute mental breakdown when he pit and then had to pit right behind that safety car. I'm sure he was just peach about that, and just the idea of him getting upset over a decision that he had no control over just makes me just cry inside. It's hysterical.
Yeah, I know what we were talking about earlier, but I think Max is going to be a champion of champions. He already is, a double world champion. I think his name is going to go down, in history. Yeah. But I just he has, since he turned up in Formula One, he was about 11 months old when he started driving for Toro Rosso. I mean, he was a baby, and he was very angry kid, and he was always taking risks, and he was constantly like he'd let the anger get the better of him. I feel like he's become more comfortable as he's become champion. But
seeing him hone his skill, like you're saying, it's being able to harness that, and his skill was always there, and only the ability to only get better at doing this thing is crazy.
I think he's pushed Sergio. He's made Sergio a better driver. I mean, when you've got Max, and like again, we've said it before. I mean, look at the drivers that have gone with Max as a teammate and crashed and burned.
Yeah. Hey, you know
just
what?
Absolutely.
You know what? He's made me a better driver. In here.
Not me. I backed into someone the other day.
Oh God! Allegedly.
It's all right. They didn't come back to life. No, I'm kidding. So
you back into someone or back over someone?
It was a good weekend. It was a good weekend. I was happy with it.
Listen. I had fun all weekend, and the one thing I love to do is just casually watch something on a Sunday where I can just drift off into slumberland, not have a care in the world. And this race allowed me to do that. That was my takeaway. Good,
that's why I watched Master and Commander later in the day.
As everyone should.
Well, look, I think we covered it.
There's one more thing. No, I think isn't Checo? He's the first driver to ever win this race more than once.
Yes, he is the first repeat winner. Baku's been quite interesting that we've had multiple, like every race different winner.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that.
One of them was Bottas, who finished like 17th or something like that. Like Bottas had a shocker. They were Alfa Romeo, just like they're doing something else with their car. I don't know. But no, what about spicy memes?
Ooh,
bring me the Formula Dank
on
Reddit.
Some spicy memes. I've only compiled a handful because again the race was just such an absolute blast all weekend. But here let me see if I can share this screen here. So I know I sent this one to you boys. Can you see it?
That's amazing.
The other one I saw that I didn't screenshot but I thought was delightful is Alpine announces new pope.
So for those that are listening to this on Spotify, it's a picture of Gasly's car which caught fire. I think it was during practice, and it's a fake BBC News article that says Alpine set on fire in France pension protests, which is very good. God. Well done. But I like that Pope one. That's very good as well.
That's really good too. There are some listen, you guys on Formula Dank bring the heat. And
Formula Dank is my favorite part of the race weekend.
It really is. I mean, good job, fellas. And this one just summarizing the entire weekend.
I remember that moment. You guys remember it too. It's pretty much when Max, I think, or Perez it was during the sprint when Max took Leclerc from the lead, and you've got a boyfriend girlfriend by the looks of it sitting next to each other. The guy's wearing a Ferrari shirt and he's got his head in his hands. He got the lady next cheering on in her Red Bull shirt. And I remember bursting out laughing when the camera cut to that as well. Just going, well, there you go. Welcome to being a Ferrari fan in 2023.
It's funny to me that they're probably leaving this race and driving home in their Mercedes.
No, they're walking back because their apartment's on the track.
Oh God, yes, fair point. Then this one, I think you'd sent me this one, which is I think again shared by ESPN. Fantastic, the infamous the Jesus pose from George.
The George Russell pose where he's like his Jesus pose, which they have then photoshopped into the massive gaping hole on the side of Max Verstappen's side pod. Yeah. And it looks like he's kind of pushing it apart. I love that one. That was, fantastic. The fact that ESPN and like proper official Formula One places are sharing things like this now is so funny to me.
It's spicy.
It used to be such a prim and proper sport, and now it's like, nah, bring the comedy, mate.
All right, now we got this one. This one speaks to all of us as Alonso fans, just waiting for the moment to him say something delightful on the radio. so yeah,
you've got people, it's Perez Verstappen 5 P1. It's basically people bored out of their mind, but the same thing is Alonso saying something on the radio, and we're all like, yes! Yeah. But yes, that guy, he just brings it. Alonso brings it. He's my man.
And then this last one I pulled specifically for Nick because I know he was just thrilled for this sprint weekend.
It's the Mean Girls meme. Stop trying to make sprint racing happen. It's not going to happen. Honestly, I thought the sprint race was fetch.
Oh, nicely. Yeah. That's deep cuts, man. You got the deep cuts there. Well, that's all I got for this week's dank zone, whatever we're going to call it.
The dank zone. I like it. Yeah, we're doing that from now. Welcome to the dank zone. Okay, cool. Well, next weekend, the dankness continues. We head to Miami for the first of 3 American races coming up this weekend. In fact, I was just driving. I was driving past Austin the other day, and I took a picture, and I sent a picture of the track, and I sent it to Nick and Ryan. Upshift Creek, our little text thread, and Ryan went, "What's that?" And I said, "Oh, it's Circuit of the Americas." And you're like, "What's that?" I'm like, all right, buddy. We'll work
cool,
on
man.
it. We'll get there.
Yeah. And look, you're an amusement park, man. I don't know all this stuff.
I'm looking forward to Miami. Oh, my favorite thing about Miami is the fake, like, it's so stupid.
Oh, the yacht, the yacht
Fake
party?
yachts, right? Where they just put down a sticker of water and they wheel in a bunch of boats.
We have Monaco at home.
We have Monaco at home. Oh man, every time they drive past that shit, it cracks me up. But this has been fun. It's been far too bloody long. Fortunately, they do get their act together. We're going to have 3 races in the next 4 weeks. Ryan, mate, thanks a lot for taking part. Thanks a lot for speaking.
Yeah, of course.
See, you got plenty to say.
I did my homework this time, man. I had like 16 races to watch this weekend. It was great.
And so many weeks to prepare.
I'm just rewatching Drive to Survive, and
I've been wanting to do that, actually. Just go back and rewatch just season 1 and see all the...
I can't believe they actually turned that show into an actual sport. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing, yeah, how that the spin-off of being an actual race, sport's incredible.
They got all the original actors. It's truly wonderful.
They needed better writers for the Baku episode, though, let's be honest. I think they could have done better, It's getting predictable.
My favorite planet in The Mandalorian.
That's a deep cut. All right, guys, we're going to end this particular episode. We promised Nick back soon. I know he's not here, so I will sign off with a vroom vroom bitches.
Yay!